let's talk about fate, shall we? Because someone asked a question on one of my videos, and at first I was like, how do I put it all into words? You know, you think a thing, but you're also very much open to being wrong about the thing. And that is just something I am about. All things in magical theory, all things about the occult, all things about the big questions in life, including what the fuck fate is. Like, this is just kind of my opinion. Please have a variety of opinions, because no one's got proof that their opinion is right. It's just an opinion. How I think fate works, which kind of goes into also, I think, how lives and just it all interconnect. For me, I think there is a quote-unquote plan, but that plan isn't so much a plan as in guidelines, as in things just to kind of follow along. And when I think of fate, whether it's a being out there in the grander universe or multiple beings in the universe, I don't feel so much as they are sitting there with their puppet strings pulling everything and making things all go. There is not like the three fates with their strings all pulling and cutting threads, deeming when we'll all die or live or whatever else, right? I more feel like if there is something, that there's a set of options that we are being pushed towards, and certain rules that we all follow for a moment with a certain purpose in mind. And maybe that purpose is something that we can't quite comprehend in this world, because it's a certain lesson or a certain experience that we're trying to like absorb into us as energetic beings. So I don't necessarily think that the gods are out there like little chess pieces moving us all around, or that there is even the energies and that sort moving us all around. And I don't even think that even if we are the ones that technically made the plan before we came into this life to learn a lesson, to experience a certain thing, I don't even think we have to necessarily stick to the thing that we set out. Because how many times in life do you decide something and it's not even because something else came up, you know, something outside of you has affected and just changed your decisions? So many times, especially for me, I have gotten the exact thing I want, or I started experiencing exactly what I want. Like, it seems all to come together. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, but wait, I just want this slight alteration, this slight change, this little nibbit. And I think that's a lot what fate actually is this loose flow of energy, this current that is guiding us in a certain direction, and it can be really, really hard to fight that direction. So we kind of like go with the flow, right? But that doesn't mean necessarily that the current can't change, or that we can't get in a boat and completely avoid it. I think all rules, no matter what, have an exception. I like to think of, and a lot of those exceptions come out of just invention of a new way of looking at things. We used to, as humans, look at gravity and staying on the ground is something. It's just like, we're walking. You're walking, maybe you're driving, maybe you get on a boat, maybe you learn how to swim, but your ass is staying pretty damn close to the fucking ground. And then the Wright brothers came along, and then someone found jet fuel, and eventually we got so far past the damn gravity that we floated out in space. That is a thing that was like, it used to be a rule that we didn't think could be broken, right? And then through ingenuity and trying new things and attempting new levels that so many people deemed impossible before, we were able to show that, like, well, I mean, yeah, generally, yeah, you stay your ass on the ground, but if you got enough force to kick yourself up, you could escape it. The rules change. I think that's a lot what fate is. Fate is the standard set rule. It is the guidelines that are there firmly to kind of guide you through life in the general direction, right? Like, the majority of your life is going to be set here on Earth. The gravity is there for a reason. The current pulls you there for a reason, whether for your own good, for you to learn a lesson, to take something in. Well, that's a whole nother question, is why the fate is doing the thing it's doing. But I don't think necessarily that it's impossible to break, or impossible to get around, or impossible to change. I think we have a lot more influence over the things that we really want. And I think when we tap into joys and intuition, when something really lights us up, I think it's not necessarily fate confirming itself, or us realizing maybe we need something other than the fate that we expected. I more so think it's that we have just aligned with something that is inspiring right? It sparks something. It's the essence of creation, right? Whether that creation is an experience, a piece of art, another human. It's all about finding those pieces and creating more and more and more and experiencing more and more and more so that we can advance and even do more than we even thought possible within the certain confines, to the point where even that confinement changes and we escape past it and suddenly we're floating in space. I honestly think that so much, that whether the universe at large has a plan, or our gods have a plan, or guides, spirits, ancestors, what have you, I think we all enter our lives a little bit with our own plan ourselves. We come in to the existence and kind of have a certain checklist we like to hit, but in a lot of ways it's like when you plan a vacation and you're like, I want to see this place, I want to eat this food, and I want to go here, here, and here, and I'm staying here. Like, you make those reservations, you booked the flight, you did the whole thing, right? But how many times have you maybe gone on vacation and it didn't go to plan? You didn't feel like getting up early that day, or the jet lag kicked in, you're like, I need a minute, or there's something new and fascinating and you're like, listen, I don't need to go over here, I'd rather go do that thing over there. Or maybe you meet some interesting people that lead you down something entirely new on your trip. That's what I think so much of our lives is like when it comes to the fate that we choose. I think we have set out guidelines, right? I think, and with stuff that really matters, right? Like if there's another soul and we're like, hey, me and you, we're meeting up in this life, right? You're gonna meet up with that person in this life. That's unavoidable. But to say that every single thing you do is preordained, whether by you or someone else, I don't think that's so much it. I think we're a little bit afraid of the idea of free-flowing chaos and possibility. You know, fate is kind of a structure. It is an order to this idea of the universe at large, our lives, that something has a limit to it. And I don't think necessarily free-flowing chaos or 100% order is the answer. So many times I think it's a bit of both, right? It's a bit of, I need a little structure, because otherwise it's like when you're staring at a blank page as an artist, or you're staring at a blank page as a writer, or, you know, someone gives you a whole new problem without even giving you any sort of way to start. Like, there's no background information, just like, hey, I'm gonna ask you this random question from which you have no idea. You're like, I need some context, please. That's the context. It's a thing. It's something to get you started, a guideline, a general direction as to which you can go, general things to play with, to mess around with, general borders of which to explore and play until those borders are no longer satisfying to you. But then you can free flow within it and do almost whatever you want. And I think sometimes a lot of what we see as the immovable, the things that we feel are hard and fast laws, like the gravity thing I explained before, there's no way to get my ass off of the fucking earth, isn't there? It might not be in the way you thought, right? It might not be in the way of, I thought I could just like jump off the ground and eventually fly up with just my body. Like, it might not be as you see it, but that's the whole point, is that for us to understand more, we have to play within the boundaries we're set, to the point where then we're pushing against those boundaries and going, why are these here? And then from there, I think we can even break the plans that we have set forth, whether the universe has set forth, whatever is set forth, we can break out of that and explore even further. And eventually what that all comes down to is we will advance as energetic beings, maybe to godhood, maybe to being able to do even more grander things just within, you know, our lifetimes. Think of how amazing that is, how magical that would be to see a rocket ship go up for the first time. To be in that rocket ship, to be just soaring through the fucking sky to the point where suddenly everything is just, all this pressure is holding you back. You feel like there's no freaking way I can break out of this, and then suddenly you're floating, just weightless. When I think of like the modern marvels, you know, the modern things like that, that just are so in a way accepted because we've grown up with it in our history, right? But thinking of how people's mindsets were before that, and thinking how transformative that is for all of our consciousness. You know, the idea of floating freely, effortlessly is something that's used in songs, it's used in poems, it's something that is used in TV shows. It's almost a way of describing love now. And love has existed, you know, it's a concept that we've had for forever, but suddenly here's this thing, it's like, hey, no, actually that describes it so well. You're just floating in just ecstasy, being in love. That's one of the things that is so amazing to me, is the idea that you're given boundaries, a plan, a structure to find a way to break it, right? It's like being a little kid and building all the blocks up. I made the structure to some ways destroy it, to some ways break out of it. You need a structure, you need certain limits, certain confinements for certain reasons, and they can be very, very helpful. Even the structure as big as fate is only a tool to the point where we no longer need it. When in the world that will be, maybe we're all kind of free conscious flowing at the point. Maybe there is no grand plan at this point, and that's kind of why the world feels like it's so chaotic right now. Maybe us as a collective conscious have used to be a thing, and it was talked about all the time, but now it's no longer a thing because we're all just kind of like throwing our intention out there and seeing what the hell happens. Maybe. But I think it's not necessarily free-flowing chaos or the structure of fate. I think it's a bit of both. I think there are guidelines, and they are firm, and they are there. But there is a way for us to break out of it. There is a way for us to change our fate. There is a way for us to twist and bend the planned at hand. I don't think we're necessarily destined, and there's no way to break the destiny. You're not destined to do something you desperately don't want to do in this life. You have not preordained every horrible thing that has happened to you, or every good thing that has happened to you. So much of it, I think, is we set in a guideline, and then we are here within those guidelines with a bunch of other people with their own guidelines. And naturally, sometimes guidelines cross and conflict, and then there's some problems. So yeah, those are just my very, I guess, brief thoughts on kind of how I feel fate works-ish. Leave your comments down below how you guys feel about it, because again, just my thoughts and opinions. None of us know the rules. That's the whole point of all of this, right? Is exploring. Seeing if we can poke it enough to figure out what the rules are. Anyway, as I said earlier, this is part of Utober, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.